Kyle Klingman with Trackwrestling. We have one of the all-time great high school wrestlers. His credentials are ridiculous. He has 8 stop signs, 2 cadet, and then 6 junior national championships, double in 93, 94, 95, 4-time Georgia state champion, 2-time Cadet World medalist, and a junior world champion in 1994. It's Sean Hage. How are you, Sean?
Very good. How are you, Kyle?
Good to talk to you, man. This is fun. Of course, for me, we're contemporaries. I graduated high school in 95, so I always remember you dominating the scene when you were in high school. But when you go way back, sounds like it was a family thing that you got into wrestling, and this was just part of your DNA and what you were supposed to do growing up.
It's funny you say that. My father was a wrestler. He didn't actually start until he was a sophomore in high school. After Dick Black, he's a Hall of Famer out of Minnesota, had seen him play basketball and said he was so bad he should definitely wrestle. And so he got involved with that. And but my dad was not one to push us. We were around wrestling, we saw wrestling, but we were not put into wrestling. And until we had whined and cried and complained to him enough that he finally relented, he would let us get into wrestling. And once we all, there's 3 brothers, my older brother, my younger brother, and me. We never stopped.
So it was a family affair. This is just what you did, huh?
Absolutely. Mom, dad, everybody.
Tell us about those trips. I mean, where did you go? What did you do?
You name it. My father, he was a teacher. My mom was a teacher. They were very focused on about how we were raised. So my mom didn't start working until I was in 3rd grade. Like, she just took care of us. It was just, making sure the kids. So trying to bounce out when we were younger to go to big trips was tough. But then, of course, after my mom went back to work, being able to afford those trips, trying to pay for everything that they didn't pay for when she wasn't working was tough too. But if my father could work it out, he was going to get us there. And so, I remember going to Indianapolis for AAUs, Minnesota. We bounced around anywhere and everywhere that there was wrestling and a cheap motel that we could sleep in. So,
what was the wrestling scene like in Georgia?
Well, there was always tournaments every weekend. It's not where it is now. There's a mindset now that's completely different. Back then, you had your certain guys, certain teams that got motivated and they really wanted to push it and take it further. Guys like Jeff Vasquez, Jeff Bedard. There's so many names, Charlie Hurd, there's so many names that popped out, through those years, but Georgia was not a wrestling state, so it really didn't catch fire. But there was, if you wanted to find it, you could find good wrestling in Georgia.
Did you pick up on the sport right away? Was it a natural fit?
My father had won his 2nd state title as a team. My first year that I wrestled, I wrestled at the Parkview Thanksgiving tournament. It was where my brother graduated high school. He was a 4-timer also. I went in, I wrestled my first match. I tied and lost on criteria. My second match, I tied and won on criteria. And my 3rd match, I was getting beat by 14 points. When I thought the kid tore my singlet, I started crying and I tried to beat the crap out of him and came back and lost by a point. And so I didn't medal the tournament, but I was just devastated. I thought my dad had to be so embarrassed of me that, here he is, the state championship coach. He could do all these things, and, his kid couldn't even win a medal at a tournament, and crushed it. But he wasn't like that. Never said a word, hugged me, went on to the next thing, same crap.
What year was that in your lineage? How old were you?
I had to have been about 6. It had been about 82, 83, right in there.
So you just had something that you felt like you were embarrassing your dad, huh?
Yeah, I didn't know how my dad was putting up with it, and that was never the way he was. He may be upset about a match, and he may say something, but he was always going to come back and, hey, this is what I was talking about, and this is what we needed to focus on. There was no pressure. My younger brother had a tough time with my older brother being a 4-timer. He was the first 4-time Quad A state champion in Georgia. I ended up being the 2nd. But when my brother came in as a freshman, I was a sophomore, hadn't won a state title as a freshman. And so he had the pressure of his older brother and, me, and then his oldest brother, same thing. And so everybody kind of looked at him, and the pressure was ridiculous. And my younger brother, Steven, was a great wrestler. But he ended up quitting that year. And my father was one, we didn't quit things. If you started out in soccer, you were going to finish that season. You may never go back again, but you were going to have to finish that season. And my father knew what kind of pressure he was under, and just kind of let him go for it. And he came back. He came back and ended up, he should have won a state title as a senior, got bronchial pneumonia. And with a kid that he had beaten 15 different times, he lost in the semis and ended up placing fifth. And then when he went to college, he didn't want to be too far from home. And for the scholarship he was going to be trying to work for, it was going to be further away. And so he stayed home and went to Auburn.
What was the relationship like you had with your parents growing up?
I had a great relationship. My mom was my toughest critic, and my dad was my best friend. It kind of hurt me. My dad was so good about being a coach, a buddy, and separating those roles that I didn't realize how good a coach he really was. I just assumed I was doing it myself. My father would teach a lesson, he'd just keep rolling me back into that same lesson until either I picked it up or I stopped doing the stupid thing I was doing. My mom was my biggest supporter, but was also my biggest critic. She jumped my butt about anything in a heartbeat and had no problems with it. One story I remember, my freshman year, the guy I had to beat my freshman year to win state was Scott Engel. And I don't know if you remember Scott Engel. He got second at juniors to Nick Nutter in 92? I think it was 92. So I'm coming in as trying to win state as a freshman, and nobody in Georgia had really placed well at juniors in a while, especially at least in the finals. And I got the guy who placed in the finals in my weight class, so it was kind of tough. And I wrestled him at county and lost by a point in overtime. So I told my mom I was thinking about going to 71, cutting down to 171. And she chewed me out for about 15 minutes between where we were at the high school to get home. And I never brought up going to 171 again to avoid Scott Engel. So my parents were great. I cannot say enough good things about them and what they did to help me with my career.
When do you feel like this clicked for you? Because we went through your credentials. So you're going to junior nationals and you're winning everything. It's double all the way through. When along your wrestling journey did you feel like this was clicking? You're like, I got something.
I always felt like a fraud. I always, being from Georgia, nobody ever was, hey, yeah, the Georgia guy. Everybody was excited about getting the Georgia guy because they knew they were going to kick the crap out of him. And everybody doesn't have, you'd hope you have that confidence that I absolutely could do everything. I didn't have that confidence, I was going to work as hard as I could using what I had. And, it was working. But I always was just waiting for somebody to figure me out. And so when I hit college and I started to lose, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, man, they figured me out, I'm done. And I never could get my mind to separate it. Take the emotion out of it and go back to just the technique. What was I missing? What was I not doing? What was I doing wrong? And it took me a while before I finally got there. And by that time, with the injuries and everything else, it was an uphill battle. But going through high school, I always, I never thought I should be there. I thought I was, snuck in, and I just needed to keep working as hard as I could to make sure that I stayed on top so nobody could figure it out.
But Sean, you weren't a fraud. Like, you won all of these. So you're winning junior national titles against everyone. You won a junior world champion. Did that ever sink in that you're going against national and world competition and you're winning?
No, I was always afraid when I stepped on that mat that somebody was going to beat me, that I was in constant fear. So I trained all the time. I mean, I just had my second knee replacement. My big problem, and this is what I figured out years later, I put a lot of energy into what I was good at. Strong, athletic, hips, throws, upper body. And so the areas that I was good at, I really focused at because I was going to make myself better and overcome everything. It was the crap that I didn't do well that I wouldn't really focus on, and that's what hurt me. And so while I was putting all this time in, I was putting in the wrong areas. And coming into high school, like did I enjoy my success? I absolutely did. But I never got to the point where I could feel like I was cocky because, like I said, again, I was just waiting for somebody to figure me out. I figured out a technique or whatever else, and that nobody else has figured, and somebody's going to get it. And so I was in a constant fear of that. So I was constantly trying to do something to just steel myself for the next match.
What were people saying when you were succeeding and doing all these things? Were you getting a lot of praise for it?
Oh, I absolutely was getting praise. I mean, here in Georgia, nobody's going to say something to your face, oh, I think you're full of crap, but I was getting the praise. I was getting the articles. I was getting all those things. But just personally, I never felt comfortable. I never got to that point where I was just, all right, I've got this. Every time I walked in, I'm sizing everybody up. Did I run enough? Did I train enough? Did I cut the weight right? I'm an anxiety person. I still have problems with anxiety. And that was something that plagued me my entire career. And so even going through high school, the more success, the more things that happened, the more anxiety I had, because that was the bigger fall that was going to happen. Now that I did this, a lot of the things that I did, it was, and I've had a lot of years to think about these things. My older brother was a 4-time state champion. I got to win it, watch him, see him to when he won it as a freshman. Couldn't beat the guy. He was losing by 4 points with 11 seconds left on the clock. Hit the kid in an elevator, put him on his back, and pinned him with 3 seconds left on the clock to win the state title. Now, had the kid come off his back, he still would have won by a point. And when I saw that, I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. Because, everybody went nuts. And so everything I did was to train for that. Trying to make the Cadet World team. I was going to do it because, if I didn't win state as a freshman, if I made a Cadet World team, I still looked pretty good. So all these other things that I was doing, I was trying to pad my resume so that if I didn't hit the one goal that I told everybody that I was going to do, I could always look back and say, well, I did do this, and I did do that, and I did, But when I started doing those things, I started seeing success, and it continued, and everything, just kind of snowballed and kept on going. And it went into juniors, and it went into cadets, and it went into the worlds, and et cetera.
Did you feel layered pressure the more success you got?
Yes. Well, you at the time, Georgia was not putting out a whole lot of folks that people were paying attention to. There was a few, and they were very good wrestlers. But the attention to Georgia was not a lot. My team liked to see us do well, and me being in the finals was big, so that put pressure. The high school that I was at, my father had just started the program there. So we're a brand new high school with one guy hitting the finals every time. So I was getting the pressure from those teammates. The anxiety that I just naturally felt and I put on myself, I just added to that. And then every time I did something that added to my accolades, it's going to hurt that much more if something happened. So.
What did it feel like when you won number 6? The response, you hear different feelings when you reach a high level. You won 6 junior national championships, your 6th one in 1995. What did that feel like?
I was really excited. My teammates were so pumped for me. They were so motivated. They were very supportive. I could almost say a sigh of relief. I didn't have to go to bed at night sitting there thinking about the next stop sign. I didn't have to sit there and think about, how bad it would be if I lost, or, it was kind of like, this is done. I can move forward and go on. But then, of course, the pressure of college, as soon as I finished that, it was like, now what do I got to do in college here? So it was like, I always figured out one way or another to give myself some more anxiety. But it was huge. My brothers, my younger brother was there. My father was there at juniors. A lot of kids that I was good friends with that wrestled in high school were there. Sandy Stevens, the announcer, I've known for years, she was there cheering me on, in the finals. There was so many different coaches from so many different states that I'd worked with that were there. I mean, I go to a wrestling tournament and I joke with my kids these days, it's like a family reunion for me. It's folks I haven't seen in forever, and we go right back into our own, And so having all those people around me it's unexplainable. It was just fantastic.
So you got 8 of those. Do you have them hanging in your house?
Actually, I'm sitting in my office. We just moved. I just moved schools last year, so we're still digging out of boxes, and they're actually sitting in a box next to me on my desk here.
You proud of it when you look at them?
Oh, I am. I mean, I slept with those things on the bus coming back. I had them up in my room. I've had them up in every house. It was something that it was a big goal for me, and then I hit the goal, and so it's something I'll cherish forever.
Why the decision to go to West Virginia? What was it about that program that got you to go?
Actually, my dad and I were just talking about this morning over coffee. My brother had gone to West Virginia, but my father was also big to make sure that I was making my decisions for me, not my brother. My big 3 choices at that time was West Virginia, Iowa State, and Minnesota. Minnesota, because that's where my father's from, and we have a lot of background from up there. And then Iowa State and West Virginia. Iowa State had Mike Van Arsdale was there, Kevin Jackson was there, Bobby Douglas was there. And so it covered my freestyle, it covered my workout partners, it covered my, going further. And then at West Virginia, I had Nate Carr, I had Dean Morrison, and then I had Dominic Black. Dominic, who probably should have pulled it out in 91. Dean Morrison, who pulled it out in 95. And then, Nate Carr speaks for himself. And then they also had my brother. So when I looked at the workout situations, it was kind of, Iowa State was a good choice. So was West Virginia. Minnesota, there was no specific, but there was so much support there with, because my style was heavy Greco. There was a lot of support there. But when it came down to it, West Virginia had my brother and the training situation. So I ended up at West Virginia. Sadly, though, all 3 of them, Nate, Dean Morrison, and Dominic Black, were gone within a year and a half of me arriving, and kind of left me hanging there. So,
what was the college experience like for you then, those 4 or 5 years?
College was tough. I mean, I hadn't lost that much. I lost more in college than I lost my entire career put together. When you look at all the numbers, I didn't understand the importance of coaching. My father had always been my coach, and he had been such a good coach about it. He kind of just fit himself in there, and it, arrogantly as a stupid kid, you think, oh yeah, I did that. It was my father making me relearn the lesson 15 times before I finally figured out what to do. When I went to West Virginia, Turnbull was a good coach. He was more of a hands-off approach, and he was also a lightweight guy. A lot of my stuff was anxiety and mental, and he did his best to help me with that. But once we lost Dean, Dominic, and Nate, we really didn't get any heavyweight coaches back in. We had Zeke Jones, a couple others, but there was no heavy coaches. Then with my weight class being where it was, I was sitting about 220, and I couldn't make 97 once they put in the assessment, and I wasn't a full-size heavyweight. And about that point, my knees were starting to deteriorate. My neck was giving me problems, and so it was kind of try to put on weight, try to continue to keep training. It just, but what it came down to, and I've always looked at this, I didn't find what I needed. You look at all kinds of folks that went to wherever, they found what they needed, they trained, they got what they should, and then they went out and competed. And mentally, everything else, I screwed up a lot of situations that I didn't go find what I needed to do. And trying to switch over from freestyle Greco to straight collegiate. I wrestled scholastic in high school, but I wrestled freestyle Greco scholastically in high school, really. I upper body throws, different things like that. I really never truly wrestled a scholastic style. And the switch over was very tough for me, and I was very stubborn and switching over, which killed me there. There's a number of different things that hit me up, but it also made me a better coach. Coming through high school and middle school, I didn't understand why somebody didn't want to get up early and go train. It's easy to get up and go early and train if you're winning all the time. If you're not winning all the time, why the hell are you going to invest that time to get up early to make yourself miserable to go do those things? And I didn't understand that. And when I hit college and I was still losing and I was not having the success that I wanted, I understood the importance of keeping myself focused, get myself up, keep moving, keep going. And that's helped me with my coaching tremendously. If you look at it, God puts in your path what you need. That's what I needed to be a decent coach, because that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And it was a hell of a lesson to learn, but I guess I'm glad I learned it.
At West Virginia, you were a two-time qualifier your junior and senior year at heavyweight. You just said you didn't find what you needed. Could you have found what you needed elsewhere? And do you think those results would have been changed had you gone to a different program?
Well, the trick of it is everybody leaves. It's easy to just quit, leave, go somewhere else. I'm gonna find, because you guys aren't doing it. If you look at our truly great wrestlers that have come out from nowhere, they found what they needed in that room, however they had to. And if they had to travel and come back, that's what they did. And they found what they needed. They had that drive and the desire and the focus to get that done. And I would like to think I had that, but obviously I didn't, because I didn't do what I wanted to do in college. And being right there at West Virginia, right next to Pennsylvania and all the different, Ohio, all those different areas, I could have gone and found something to supplement whatever I was missing. And it didn't happen. And so that's something I put on myself. I would love to blame injuries. I'd love to blame style. I'd love to blame, there's a number of different excuses I can make, but what excuse did Anthony Robles use? The guy has one leg and he's still winning an NCAA title. He found what he needed and I didn't. So
what pressures come with that? So you come in with 8 stop signs, 6 junior national championships. You go to college. Of course, the expectation is that you're going to win at least an NCAA championship. Did you feel that pressure throughout college?
Throughout college. My family, my brother was good about helping me trying to deal with it. But I was nowhere near prepared for that kind of pressure. And I failed miserably, buckled a little bit as a freshman with it. Reset my goals, got my head right, and came back, and I gave it the best effort I could. And maybe it wasn't the correct effort, or in the right spots, but the pressure never let up. I kept for the longest time. I kept just, it was time. I just thought, it's time to be done with wrestling. Because it wasn't going my way. I couldn't figure things out, and I just wanted to be done. And then it was done. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, I can't leave this taste in my mouth like this. I couldn't. So I went to Jersey for the summer and just kind of got away from everybody and figured out what the hell I wanted to do. And I finally came to the conclusion I wanted to continue wrestling. So I came back and, went to the Greco. But the pressure was, it was tough, and again, no different than anybody else was dealing with. I just didn't deal with it very well.
Can you dive into what the pressure is, though? Is it self-made pressure? Is it people chirping and talking and saying, hey, you're doing great, we expect this? Where does that pressure come from?
Me, personally, wrestlers put more pressure on ourselves than anybody. I can still remember in matches when I finally got to a point where I was wrestling not to lose. I'd sit and stare at your leg, and I know I could shoot on that leg and get that leg, but I wasn't going to take that chance because I might not get it. I might get this. I stopped wrestling. I shot 5 times total in college. In a competitive match, 5 or under, I shot ever. Now, of course, a couple of those years were at heavyweight when I was an undersized heavyweight, but as a 90-pounder, there's no excuse for not shooting. It's absolutely ridiculous, but I was so afraid to lose that I wasn't going to make any attempt to win. And so it the pressure was personal, and I'm sure there was outside pressure, but it was not affecting me as much as what I was doing to do to myself.
What's your advice then? Because this is an anxiety sport. I'm sure there's a lot of people that go through this. If you had to instruct people about how to overcome anxiety that you faced, how would you suggest doing that?
Yeah, don't do it the way I did it. That's the only way I can say. A lot of times, with my wrestlers now at Lumpkin County, I'll tell them specifically exactly what they're thinking, where they're, hey, your mindset's this right now and you're doing this. I said, you've got to change that. This is where we need to focus. This is where we got to go. I said, but I'm trying to get you to fix something I didn't fix. The hindsight's great. I mean, I wish I could go back and do stuff again because my mindset would be totally different. It comes back to your coaching, the way you're training. I mean, there's no cookie cutter answer for anybody on the anxiety. It's something that you've got to play with and keep working with, and it's something that needs to be worked with just as importantly as your cardio, as your strength, as your technique, and everything else, because it'll cripple you faster than anything. I never figured out the answer, so I can't sit here and say anything that would be the key to somebody. But you got to keep looking. I've tried everything: reading books, video. You name it. I've tried it. It just, I had the wrong mindset. A good, to deal with the pressure, a good mindset's perfect. And if you have a good coach that can keep you in that mindset, that'll help. But I don't have an answer.
What was that like when you graduated college? How did you view wrestling once you got out of West Virginia?
Well, I never hated wrestling. Just hated how I was doing in wrestling. Being done with wrestling, at first it was a relief. It's like, man, I don't have to deal with this pressure anymore. I mean, because I got to a point where I was sleeping very little. I was training all the time. I was, it just stressed me out. But then as soon as it was done, it was kind of, that's it. I mean, that's, talked about the Olympics forever. I talked about all those things. So I took that summer to kind of get away from everybody. So I had my own influence, not anybody else influencing me on what my decision was going to be. With that being said, I came back and my knees were in such bad shape that I couldn't go freestyle. So I went with the Greco and then started back in there. And then I fractured my neck again. I was wrestling. They figured out I had fractured it at the Sunkist Open. And then I had trained the rest of the year, and then I wrestled seniors. And I had thought it was a shoulder problem, but it was a problem over my neck. And then when they finally told me that, I either had to have the neck fused or just be done, it's kind of like, I had a great excuse to be done with wrestling. Nobody could give me a hard time. I didn't quit. And then I started to wonder whether I was quitting because because I wanted to quit or because my neck was really hurt. So my emotions with wrestling when it got done and everything else has been all over the place. I'm now at a place now I'm happy with where everything went and the way it did. And, I'm good with wrestling. It's my favorite sport. It's what I push everybody into. I think wrestling is such a great thing. There's so many things that I learned from wrestling to help me get through life that had nothing to do with wrestling. The not quitting, the persevering, the fighting through. There's so many great things you get from wrestling. And, I can sit here and complain about the success that I thought I should have had, or, I can cheer on the things that I did get from it. And I got so many great things from it.
In 1999, in the first round of the NCAA championships, you wrestled the hottest thing in college wrestling. He was blowing up. If there would have been the internet at the time, you wrestled Brock Lesnar from Minnesota. Do you remember what it was like going into that match?
Well, think about headbutting a brick wall. Holy cow. I mean, and Brock was such a monster. I can still remember he hit a double leg right off the bat, and I caught him with my elbow, blocking the shot right in his face. And he stopped and he got up, and then he reached over like he would pick up a 2-year-old and grabbed me by my lats and picked me straight up off the mat. And he did this, and I felt like such a you know, such a baby, you know, being manhandled by this guy. And I remember grabbing his shoulders. And I looked over at Turnbull in the corner, and Turnbull looks at me and just goes. So when he threw me down, I mean, it just went through that. But and Brock, you know, he was so strong. It took him a second, but he would eventually start slowing down. But by the time he started slowing down, I was so exhausted I didn't have anything left. But he was a tough competitor, great competitor. I mean, you know, everything they say about him, he was a beast. He was an absolute beast.
Do you enjoy being able to give back to the sport right now and being in coaching?
Oh, I absolutely do. My father coached from the 70s till 2000. Sorry, my son is right next to me.
Yeah.
And he has so many guys that'll come back, you know, that sing so many praises to my father about what wrestling did for them as they came through. These are all guys that, I mean, they were my older brothers. I mean, I've got, you know, 300 or 400 older brothers that I've gone through with the years, that, you know, did well, that competed in college, that, you know, and they're still around. My father's almost 80 years old, and these guys still calling up. They'll stop by. They'll come, you know, and that's a great thing. And I would hope for that for myself as well, as I'm coaching through. You know, whether we win titles or not, I'm wanting them to learn what they should from wrestling, and then, you know, everything else will take care of itself.
Are there still talk, or is there still talk when you're at state tournaments or any tournaments about your credentials? Do people still bring it up?
There are, you know, and then you got your folks that got their opinion on everything, you know, oh, well, this and that. You know, I stopped listening a long time ago. You drive yourself nuts trying to argue everybody's opinion, and everybody has one. So, you know, it is what it is.
You still scrap a little bit in the room?
I try to. I've had both knees replaced this year, and so I'm not sure what that's going to allow me to do. But I've stayed on the mat forever. I told my dad the other day that I'm not a good enough coach not to be on the mat. So I still need to have a chance to scrap a little bit. So I'm hoping my knees are going to allow me to do that. We'll see.